In 2016, Ryu Ga Gotoku Studio released Yakuza 6, a game that was written to create an end to the story of Kazuma Kiryu. With the Like a Dragon series shifting focus, featuring a new protagonist and a new RPG-centric gameplay style that would be revealed in 2017, it would fall to a new franchise to carry the torch for the studio's action-adventure escapades. The game, known as Judge Eyes, would release in 2018 in Japan, and the following year known as Judgement in the rest of the world, and despite bearing many resemblances to RGG Studios' flagship franchise, this new series would seek to distinguish itself from that of Yakuza. Hello, you're watching the Sega Guys and I am Dan the Mega Driver, and I'll be looking back on Judgement and whether this title stands up to Ryu Ga Gotoku's greatest. To start with, admission time. There's just no way around it, but I only beat this game recently, having never played it before. Shameful, I know. It's been on the backlog since forever, but I wanted to beat the Yakuza games first, and that wasn't helped by the fact they just kept coming. But really, this gives me some fresh insight into the world of Judgement and how it fares against the rest of the series. So first, a little bit of backstory. Judgement was actually conceived after the release of Yakuza 5 in Japan. Following 5 mainline Yakuza games and a few spin-offs, Sega's top brass were keen for RGG to diversify and create a new franchise. After a slew of new team members that were brought in to contribute to what the game would look like, development started around 2015, which suggests that it began in earnest after the release of Yakuza 0. The idea for Judgement was to use the studio's learnings from the Like a Dragon franchise and apply that to a completely new IP. Toshihiro Nagoshi served as the game's writer and executive producer, while Koji Yoshi would serve as the director on the project, which would be then known as Project Judge. In order to both differentiate from Yakuza whilst maintaining some of the appeal from those games, a cast of real-life actors were drafted in, with popular actor and singer Takeya Kimura taking the leading role of Yagami. Project Judgement was revealed to the public as Judge Eyes in September of 2018 and released in Japan just a few months later in December to a warm reception in the region. In typical Sega fashion though, things are never straightforward. The game was actually pulled from sale just 3 months later when the actor of Hamura, Pierre Taki, was arrested for cocaine use, and with criminal proceedings ongoing with what is considered a serious crime in Japan, it put the status of the game and the Western release in limbo. Sega were quick to act though, with Ryu Ga Gotoku studio producer Daisuke Sato confirming that they would not allow Pierre Taki's actions to disrupt the game's success. By the time the Western version of Judgement had launched in June, just 3 months later, actor Mio Tanaka had replaced Pierre Taki with the updated Japanese version, returning the title to store shelves in Japan the very next month. While initially a PS4 only title, the game eventually came to the PS5 and next-gen Xbox consoles in 2021, and it's the Series X version that you're seeing here because that's the one that I played. It was scheduled to come out on the PC shortly after, but more drama ensued as Takeya Kimura's talent agency could not come to an agreement with Sega on using the Yagami actor for the PC release. Finally, that was resolved in 2022 and the game is now available on all current gen platforms, that is, everything except for the Nintendo Switch. So the genesis of Judgement out of the way, what's it all about? Well, Judgement tells the story of Takeyuki Yagami, affectionately referred to as Tak by his good friend and partner Kaito, and Yagami by pretty much everyone else. Yagami was once a promising lawyer who became embroiled in a murder case that effectively ended his career and his passion for the job. In the present day, that is 2018, he now works as a private detective, taking on all sorts of work to keep the roof over his head. Despite his change of career, Yagami remains close to his friends at Genda Law Office, his old employer, and maintains a complicated relationship with the Yakuza Tojo clan subsidiary, the Matsuguni family. Through these relationships, Yagami becomes involved in a case surrounding a serial killer who picks out his victim's eyes. When the victims are all connected through a rival Yakuza faction and a prominent Matsugune captain called Hamura seems to be the one to take the fall, Yagami helps his old Genda lawyer friends with the case. That's all I'm going to say about the plot at this point. It, of course, gets far grander than it initially appears, and I really don't want to spoil much at all. At first, it feels like a little bit of a slow burn, and I found myself losing interest a little bit in the early goings. But once it really starts kicking in, it becomes an incredibly gripping and engaging story that hooks you in until a very satisfying conclusion. In my opinion, this is probably RGG Studios' best story. It's more grounded than the adventures of Kiryu and Ichiban, with far fewer plot contrivances than the mainline Like a Dragon games, and it does enough to separate itself from the adjacent series. That applies to the visuals as well. Kamurocho is a place that I have visited at least 8 times in the Like a Dragon games, and I've even been there once in real life, if you count the analogue that is Kabukicho that Kamurocho is based on. But anyway, in Judgement, it looks different. While the map is generally the same, it's the swapping of the high contrast look of Yakuza 6 for a more saturated, sepia-tinged look in Judgement. This actually made it seem like it was more realistic to me, and was akin to how Kabukicho looks in real life during the day. This gives it a distinctly different look to the mainline Yakuza games, and makes you think that this is a game that wants to be more of a detective thriller movie as much as it is a video game. But don't worry, Judgement still is very much a video game, and one that still possesses all the qualities that something with the bleeding heart of RGG Studio would have, despite the detective premise and the seemingly serious setting. For the most part, playing as Yagami, you'll be exploring Kamurocho, looking to advance the main story and solve the mystery of the killer known only as the Mole. Battles take place very much in the same style as those in Kiryu's games. Whether it's through story events or through random battles with hooligans in the street, they play like a roaming beat 'em up. Controls will be familiar. You have your light and your heavy attacks, a block button, a grab button and a dodge button. If you build up enough EX meter, you can also use your EX actions, which act as cinematic special moves. It's essentially the same system as Yakuza 0, even down to the ability to switch combat styles during battle. I mean look, you can even pick up bicycles just like in the previous games to clobber people with. In the open world of Kamurocho, you can visit stores, play games and an abundance of other activities. In addition to the main questline, you have sub-stories too, which can either be picked up by speaking to specific NPCs or accepted as jobs at the Yagami Detective Agency office. Aside from accepting jobs so far, it all sounds very on brand for Like a Dragon, doesn't it? Well, with the familiar stuff out of the way, we can discuss what is different. When you start the game, you'll find that Yagami is dressed as a hobo as you stalk a target through the streets. This new gameplay feature works like a stealth game, where you have to track your target but hide to avoid being detected. It features prominently in both the main story and the side missions. It's a nice addition, and the slightly altered camera angle and on-rails nature of the sections makes it feel like it offers a different view of Kamurocho. But when you really want to drill down on the detective work, you have the investigation sections. These can be crime scenes or areas that are just as important to the story, but a little bit more, say, mundane. In these, they play like a kind of point and click adventure, as you need to find certain details that will help solve the puzzle and allow Yagami to move on. There are also chase sequences that did appear in other RGG games, and they feature here prominently too, and are pretty entertaining. There's also a bunch of other puzzle-like activities, like searching social media for clues and dressing both yourself and your friends up in disguises. There's enough variety and scope within the gameplay to keep things different and interesting throughout the main campaign, and differentiate it from the previous Yakuza game entries. But you'll definitely want to check out the side stories too, because just like those Yakuza games, they can be kinda crazy, with Yagami taking on cases that involve him dressing like a vampire or chasing sex pests, amusingly called names like Ass Ketchum. There is plenty here to keep you entertained. And of course, there's 2 arcades with plenty of games inside too, with titles like Fighting Vipers providing a nice break from the normal gameplay. Like other Ryu Ga Gotoku games, there's absolutely tons to do in Judgement. My playthrough took well over 30 hours, but a 100% completion can reportedly take up to 100 hours. Given its duration, it's a good thing that the gameplay really holds up and that the narrative is so gripping, but it also helps that the game looks and sounds great too. Music director Hidenori Shoji, who has overseen so many Sega classics over the years, has been involved with every Yakuza entry and takes the helm with Judgement, delivering a soundtrack that is near perfectly suited to the game. Not only is the score excellent from an action and cinematic perspective, but I found myself with certain tracks in my head for days on end. Visuals too are wonderful. I didn't play the PS4 original, so can't really comment on that version, but on Xbox Series X, and I'm assuming PS5 and PC, the game looks absolutely incredible, up there with the very best of RGG's work. Judgement then is the full package. It plays great, it looks fantastic, it sounds wonderful, the story is gripping, and there's so much to do. It also differentiates itself enough from the core franchise to both stand alone and be an easy recommend for both fans new and old, and even those that haven't played a Yakuza game before. It's a shame that I came to this one so late, but playing it in the here and now, some 6 years after its Japanese debut, it still holds up as a monumentally great modern game. For me, it's Lost Judgment next, though a certain pirate Yakuza may get in the way first. As for Judgement, with 2 games in the franchise so far, I can only hope that Sega are able to come to an agreement with Takuya Kimura's agency and we'll see more entries in this franchise. It absolutely deserves it. But that's all for this one. If you've played Judgement, let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you've enjoyed this video, give us a like and a subscribe, as that really helps the channel. And if you want to be extra mega, why not become a member with a bunch of awesome perks from as little as 99p. But regardless of any of that, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the Sega side.